Welcome to this course on design and facilitation of e-learning courses. This is a MOOC course, massive open online course designed by the National Open University and presented by Staff Training and Research Institute of Distance Education. Myself and my colleagues will be presenting almost 40 lessons for this program. Let me give a brief introduction to this course. This program is about introducing this course to all of you, what this course contains and how it is going to be presented and what else that students need to do while going through this course. The course objectives are on your screen, that after going through this course you will be able to describe e-learning and all associated concepts with it, appreciate the learning theories that contribute or that signify the open online courses and especially teaching learning online, and 3, that we will be discussing various design issues including instructional design, how to design, develop and implement an online course, and you would be also able to select your instructional strategies that would be facilitating for a varieties of online courses that we will be doing, including courses in engineering and technology, in management, in information technology and so on and so forth. And National Open University, for instance, presents courses even in surgery, in cardiology and such other areas. Online courses are possible in different areas and not only in social science and humanities, but also in science and technology, management and so on and so forth. As you would see on the screen that we have designed this course across 4 or 5 areas. One, that will be introducing you to the basic fundamentals of distance learning, open learning, online learning, e-learning, blended learning, mobile learning and so on and so forth. How these concepts are related to each other and how finally an online learning course could be designed and developed based on these basic understanding that you have. The second part of the course would concentrate on the instructional design models and various learning theories that are contributing to design and development and delivery of online courses. More particularly, we will be focusing on instructional design and design of curriculum, design of syllabus, design of teaching learning, design of assessment, and finally the collaboration online, which will be contributing to meaning making and knowledge construction. We would also focus on various instrumentalities that would be used by you, and more particularly I think will be focusing on more open source technologies that would facilitate for you to design and develop and present your online course. And finally, we will look at 3 case studies. One in postgraduate diploma in e-learning, the second that will be presenting on agriculture, and third a case study on e-learning on nutrition. The course is basically designed for those who would be interested to take up online courses and more particularly would think of designing, developing and offering online courses in their own discipline areas. However, we have also particularly mentioned that this course would be very useful for teachers, of course, teachers in schools, colleges and universities, and the training managers in different organizations including business and industry, the instructional designers who are involved in not only in colleges and universities, but also many training organizations, course developers in school, colleges, and more particularly it could also be helpful for those who are working in the industry relating to online courses. The teaching learning transactions have been visualized such that because this is equivalent to almost all MOOC courses, and this course is from our point of view is a 4 credits course, 1 credit being 30 student study hours. So you will have 120 hours of study in this course. This will involve self-study of these video lectures, and web resources. And for these 40 video programs that we will be presenting, it will involve almost 80 hours of study. Interaction, we are proposing that there will be a discussion forum of 10 hours that students would be taking part in this course, would be interacting among themselves, which will be a guided interaction by the mentor. The assessment would involve 20 hours because each course would involve a PowerPoint presentation with video, a blueprint to go through, which is a printed material. 3, that there will be quizzes, and 4, there will be web linkages to various other sources, select sources authenticated by the mentor or the presenter. And finally, we will give you an activity. The activity will be an instructional design that will be designing your own course, which we are planning that will be devoting 10 hours. So, friends, all put together, it will be 120 hours of study. As you see on your screen, that we have designed the course curriculum such that there will be basic fundamental conceptual clarity in terms of online learning, distance learning, blended learning. 2, there will be instructional design issues and models that we'll be discussing. 3, that how collaborative learning takes place at a distance, and we'll be providing activities for you to do on your own. For instance, an activities and instructional design for your own course, which we have planned that will be devoting almost 10 hours. And finally, we'll be presenting case studies, and case studies, we present 3 case studies, meaning thereby that 3 case studies would take almost 2 to 3 hours of your study. If I get into the detailed curriculum, in this program that I am going to present you a detailed curriculum that what we'll be exactly discussing in these 40 lectures and who would be presenting what. As I said earlier, that this course is built around almost 5 components. 1, conceptual clarity. 2, instructional design and learning theories. 3, collaboration. 4, activities, and 5, case studies. So, the course curriculum to start with, as I am presenting in front of you, this is my course curriculum that I will be dealing with this program, that I will be presenting the whole program. I will introduce the course to you as I am doing right now. The course objectives and targets groups, which I have already presented. The course credits and teaching learning strategies, which I have already chalked out. Activities to be undertaken and some select case studies. What I am going to present right now is to give some details, a brief of the details of the programs that will be coming up, so that you get prepared that how the course would proceed and what this course would entail. My colleague Professor Murthy would be in the director's stride, will be presenting an introduction to open and distance learning, because online learning has emanated from the traditional open and distance learning, open learning, blended learning. When I get into my course, as you see on your screen, based on this presentation of Professor Murthy, which will be dealing with the transactional distance, the theories of distance learning, and so on and so forth, and how teaching learning takes place at a distance. Linking to that, because I have said that recapitulation of open and distance learning, I will link up to that, and I will proceed to present online learning, e-learning, blended learning, mobile learning. I will very categorically distinguish between online learning, e-learning, distance learning, blended learning, and mobile learning. And I will also be presenting the systems and processes involved in online learning in my next presentation, and how collaboration and meaning making takes place online, and how, for instance, I will simplify later, but it sounds to be a little difficult right now, how socially constructed metacognition takes place in online learning to have a highest achievement, highest understanding in the course content. My colleague Professor Biswas would be presenting on understanding learning and instruction, distinguishing between instruction and learning, and how learning can be designed, instruction can be designed, what technologies would be involved in learning design, and more particularly the process of learning, because process of learning is very important. And once the process of learning is understood, and I will be touching upon these in my presentation to the second program, Introduction to E-Learning, but that will be extended by Professor Biswas to different learning strategies, learning styles, and the processes of learning, and therefore you will be in a position to design your course addressing the particular target group, that how you will be presenting your online course and such that the learners learn effectively. Followed by this, my colleague Professor Ramanujam would be presenting various schools of thought. We'll be joining together to share the presentation on the schools of thought. He will start with behaviorism, that how behavioristic theory has dominated so far in design and development and delivery of face-to-face education, so also open and distance learning, and also to an extent online learning. He will be basically talking about that how the external stimuli, stimulus response and conditioning facilitate in learning. Basically what he will be presenting is that learning is an outside activity and one has to learn from outside, and therefore outside intervention is extremely crucial, and therefore outside evidence is extremely necessary in terms of assessment strategies to ensure that somebody has learned. He will proceed to the next learning theory, that is cognitivism, basically to talk about that it is not only outside influence which determine how learning takes place, but more particularly and more importantly that how internal cognitive activities and internal cognitive processes join together, interact and shape one's own learning. And therefore, there will be individual differences between learners to learn, and the cognitive activities between two individuals may be very different, and therefore how learning situations can be designed such that one could process information categorically within one's own ability and aptitude of one. So he will be dealing with related concepts as you see on your screen, and he will be certainly linking behaviorism and cognitivism. Beyond these two, I will proceed giving a distinction between constructivist theory of learning, constructivism as distinguished from behaviorism and cognitivism, or as may be related to behaviorism and cognitivism, and going beyond that. I will be basically focusing on that how individual differences and perceptions of learning and abilities help one's own construction of meaning and therefore distinguishable from others, and therefore there is a need that there will be socially mediated constructive situation that whereby the group learning, in group learning, that the students and teachers together join to define meaning and therefore construct knowledge and share knowledge such that there will be socially mediated metacognition. That socially mediated metacognition I will be presenting much later. From here I will also proceed, given these three very important theories of learning, the important theory that has come up today, this is called connectivism. George Siemens' connectivism and Downer's theory, who has joined George Siemens to articulate further that how today for the digital age, this is what is called a learning theory for the digital age. Connectivism simply postulates that I will be presenting later in one of the programs, that if given the information and the networks that are available in the society, one has to find out based on one's own ability and one's own strength, one has to find out the perfect pathways to connect the different modalities that are available today, including resources, open resources that are available today, so that one can best learn. And how this can be facilitated, this will also be presented. I will also touch upon that what could be limitations of constructivism and connectivism, and how therefore an eclectic presentation design would be best suited for one's own instructional design. This will be followed by my presentation in one of the programs on instructional design and instructional design issues. I will be providing an overview which will be facilitated further by my colleagues in detail for various instructional design theories and models that are available today, which are being used in large scale by instructional designers in education, training and business and industry. I will be giving an overview of instructional design and distinguishable from learning design and the design components and processes and what issues are involved in instructional design, and therefore we will be in my position to take care of those issues such that our course design is best suited for the target learners that we design. This will be followed by a presentation by my colleague Professor Ramanujam on cognitive load theory, a theory that you see on your screen, a theory that focuses on the load of working memory during instruction. So when the instruction goes on, how does the working memory works by individual students such that one can best put that into one's own advantage for most effective learning. This will be followed by him in another course, the cognitive flexibility theory. The cognitive flexibility theory simply suggests that how while instruction takes place, how one has to flexibly adjust one's own cognitive structure such that this fits into the instructional strategies and instructional inputs that are being received by the individual student, and therefore there will be a strong matching between these two and the end result would be most effective learning. This will be followed by my colleague Professor Basanti Pradhan on another very important model, the Dig and Carry model of instructional design. This model would be discussed in detail and its relationship to e-learning, the different steps that are involved in Dig and Carry model, and the special features of this model and the implications for designing of learning and more particularly e-learning. This will be followed by again by Professor Pradhan on the 4CID model. The 4CID model is an instructional design model, is an important model, and that model would be presented in detail in relation to the 10 steps that are involved in this model and the application of this model for instructional design and more particularly for e-learning. My colleague Professor Madhu Parahar would be presenting on the EDDI model. This is a very popular model of instructional design used by business houses, industry, IT companies, management houses, and colleges and universities and schools. This is a very structured model, and different steps will be presented and how to use this model for instructional design, which generally is used by many in college, university and industry and training and so on and so forth. This will be further followed by a very important model by Professor Basanti Pradhan on SEO model, analyze, state objectives, select materials, require learner participation, evaluate and revise. The SEO model is an important model and which is generally used now in also online learning, and I am sure she will be linking this up to design of online learning programs, how the various components will be designed based on the SEO model. This would be followed by another model distinguishable from cooperative learning. Professor Biswas will be presenting collaborative learning, because as you know, collaboration is extremely important in teaching and learning and training, and how collaboration takes place, of course, within a face-to-face situation called classroom, but most importantly, how collaboration takes place online. Of course, this I will be touching upon in my program on Introduction to E-Learning, that how collaboration online takes place. This will be expanded by Professor Biswas in detail and talk about that how best the learning environment could be designed such that an effective collaboration takes place and therefore effective learning takes place, both individual learning as well as group learning. Professor Biswas will continue this with a scenario based learning, because in professional education today that a scenario building is becoming very important as much as portfolio development. So, both scenario and portfolio. In this case, scenario based learning would be presented by Professor Biswas, that how in professional education that we could bring in cases and scenarios which can best represent that particular situation and context for which that professional input is taking place, which is called teaching or which is called learning from the learner's point of view. The scenario based learning will be basically, he will be focusing on an interactive scenario and how to design and develop a scenario and how to implement scenario based learning, more particularly for online teaching and learning. This will be followed by my colleague's presentation, Professor Madhu Parahar, on problem based learning. Problem based learning, as you know, that is extensively used by professional education, more so medical education. Medical and nursing education today is extensively depending on problem based learning, which contributes to shaping, working on and critiquing problems relating to one's own topic. Professor Biswas will be presenting on what is problem solving, what is problem based learning, how problem solving takes place, and therefore what kind of problem solving skills that one can develop within the learners to learn. So, friends, we would be finishing the models of learning and theories of learning with these, but these would be contributing to next presentation by Professor R. Satyanarayana, Rampelli Satyanarayana, on curriculum and course design, because all these models would be contributing to curriculum and course design. That is the foundation and a fundamental to the beginning of teaching and learning. What he will be basically presenting is that there are two approaches, top-down model and bottom-up approach. He will be presenting on both and distinguishing between these two, and would outline that how best one could combine both top-down and bottom-up approach, an eclectic approach that to best suit one's own learning objectives and the teaching learning strategies. This will be followed by the practical application of these learning theories and these models into action. To start with, preparation of learning objectives, and I will be presenting the Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives. Benjamin Bloom's cognitive, psychomotor and affective domain, and all the three would be presented, and how the taxonomy facilitates instructional design and the taxonomy facilitates teaching learning and more particularly assessment. There will be a critique on the Bloom's taxonomy and what new developments have taken place to further articulate Bloom's taxonomy in designing your online course. This will be followed by a presentation by my colleague Professor Ramanujam on Robert Garner's 9 principles of instructional design. The Garner's taxonomy will be distinguished from the Bloom's taxonomy, and Garner's taxonomy is an extensively used taxonomy today in both education and training and industry. He will be presenting this in detail, but also at the same time he will be making an reference to how best use the Garner's taxonomy or the steps to instructional design for online learning. This will be followed by Professor Ramanujam again on a very important aspect which contributes to design of teaching learning and more particularly online learning courses, that is learning styles. There are varieties of learning styles. No two individuals, no even twins, do not learn in similar way. The twins perceive the world very differently, and therefore learning styles differ across students and individuals, and how best one can design one's own course such and bring in multiple media inputs to design and present one's own program such that the students best benefit. There are slow learners, there are students who learn in disability, there are students who are visually impaired, there are students who have difficulty in hearing, and there are also mentally retarded students and so on and so forth. So, besides distinction of learning styles between normal individuals, normal students, there are also distinctions between a normal and a differently abled learner. So, Professor Ramanujam will be talking about diversified learning strategies, that how best that we can design our instruction to suit the learning styles. It could be visual, it could be auditory, it could be reading, it could be listening, it could be discussion, it could be self-reflection. All kinds of learning styles will be presented in this course. This will be followed by a very important, I said this is very important because this is a theory which has dominated largely the education and training scenario today, including management science. Vygotsky's language of thought, and how Vygotsky talks about that how thinking and language are related to each other. So, the importance of language in one's own thinking and therefore in one's own learning. And he will bring in the Vygotsky's theory of journal of proximal development and contribute to the online learning design based on these. I hope that there will be presentation to other kinds of social learning theories that are related, including activity theory, including Weber and Langer's what is called legitimate peripheral participation and the community of practice. All these will be related to, but basically the foundation is Vygotsky's theory for this. Friends, we'll proceed further with Professor Ramanujam's presentation on Brunner's memory and learning, and this will be followed by the most important aspect in learning design. Professor Madhuparar will talk about learning objectives or learning outcomes, how to design different kinds of learning objectives, and how learning objectives are related to design of courses and teaching and learning. A very important presentation would be made by me, which is called a concept mapping, and how concept mapping is facilitating design of learning and design of syllabus, design of learning, and teaching and learning further. Different kinds of concept mapping, models, and so on and so forth will be presented. This will be followed by the real application of concept mapping, that what kind of software or tools that will be used for developing concept mapping. Dr. Maithili will be presenting this course, and which will be followed by her for technology analysis for e-learning. So friends, from here we start in the course the technology aspect, the tools and technologies involved in designing. Basically, she will be talking about the open source technologies for audio, video, graphics, animation, and the learning management system, the LMS, distinguishable from the virtual learning environment. She will also continue in another course, another presentation on synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. One will be devoted to synchronous learning, the other one will be devoted to asynchronous learning. Synchronous in real time, asynchronous non-real time learning. This will be followed by my presentation on that how best we can evaluate learning, how online learning assessment rubric can be designed for assessing online learners, and also I will be talking about that how evaluation of an online course could take place, so that in future it can be modified and it could contribute to quality enhancement. This will be followed by my colleagues Professor Madhuparar's presentation on structuring an online course, that how best one can structure, because structure is very important. One cannot lose an online course. The course structure has to be structured, but how best the structuring could take place, the steps involved in structuring and the structuring template will be presented by her. This will be followed by an important aspect, that is institutional support for collaborative learning, that what institutional mechanisms should be in place so that collaborative learning, effective collaborative learning can take place, and Professor Ramanujam will be presenting on this. This will be followed by an important aspect of learning, that is teaching and learning, is facilitation of learning, and what could be the role of the tutors and skills and competencies for online tutors. It's very difficult to get online tutors today, and therefore it is important that we get the better online tutors, and online tutors could be placed anywhere, any place. They may not be face to face, they could be any country teaching a course in another country. So how best that the facilitators could help in facilitating students' learning. This will be followed by an important presentation on e-moderating. Julie Selmon's model will be presented, and the 5 steps that are involved in effectively designing and moderating online facilitation and online teaching and learning, and more particularly online learning. And Julie Selmon's model has been widely used internationally now by most of the business houses very successfully. Finally, friends, that Professor Biswas will talk about the R2D2 model of how to conduct activities in online learning. Read, reflect, display, and do model. Activities are very important. You could design your activities differently, but this model will facilitate you that how best effectively we can facilitate design and implementation of activities for online learning. Finally, friends, as you see on your screen, that will be presenting 3 case studies. A postgraduate diploma in e-learning by myself. I'll be presenting the details of that course, online course. 2, that presentation will be made from School of Agriculture. A colleague would be presenting an online course on agriculture. And finally, the School of Continuing Education will be presenting a course, online course on nutrition. And after these are completed, we will be wrapping up in another program, another presentation, that how successfully implement this online course for your own particular discipline or subject area. Thank you very much indeed.